Marc is free! Marc is free! Marc is free!
That having been said, I want to change my message and just tell you that I'm very grateful to be home. Windsor's home. All of Canada's home.
Yes, that is the self-proclaimed Prince of Pot, Marc Emery, getting a hero's welcome in Windsor, arriving on Canadian soil for the first time at around 4:20, which of course, as you well know, in marijuana world, that is code for using the green. Nonetheless, he's been in jail for about 5 years because of his pot conviction, and now he's hit the ground in Canada, and he is promising to take a campaign coast to coast, trying to get pot legalized. Robin Urbach joins us now with Marc Emery, who I think is going to shake things up. He'll get a lot of headlines, not just today, but he's already been getting them for weeks.
I think so, and with a giant marijuana leaf welcoming you home, I think it's hard not to attract the camera.
Something tells me he had a lot of Cheetos last night.
Yeah, I think so. Probably can't remember any of it.
Well, nonetheless, he probably had fun.
Yeah, it's definitely going to shake things up a little bit. He spoke to Post Media News, I think, right after he got out of prison or right around that time, and he sort of admitted, you know, he said, I think the Liberals are a little bit concerned about Jody Emery, who's his wife, getting involved in this campaign. And I think, I mean, rightfully so. The Emerys, obviously, they're known as campaigners for marijuana legalization. That's sort of their reason for being. But there are also a number of little hiccups, if you will, that have come with the Marc Emery name. And Jody Emery, unfortunately, carries that baggage with her. So I think it's something that the Liberals are right to be a little bit nervous about. Meanwhile, I think the Conservatives are excited to see what the Emerys will actually do to the Liberal campaign.
Well, you'll recall Marc Emery talking about smoking gaggers with the Prime Minister, a wannabe, and I don't think those are the kind of images Justin Trudeau wants to get out, even though he has talked about legalization of marijuana. The last thing he wants is to be, you know, looked upon as like, you know, the pot king, the pot minister.
And I think it was actually Sun News who called out Marc Emery on that and said, well, did this actually happen? And then he sort of said it didn't happen, so it ended up being a lie. Whatever it is, I mean, I think Justin Trudeau has sort of hit a sweet spot with this marijuana legalization position. There was a survey done for the government recently which found that about 37% of respondents were in favor of legalization. I think another...
Relaxing the laws. I didn't get the sense it was all-out legalization.
Right.
But they do want some changes.
They do want some changes. So I think Justin Trudeau is on the right track with this, at least. I think his strategy should be, or it seems to be, going at this issue from a centrist perspective, whereas when you bring in the Emerys, you're bringing in that sort of fringe. And I think especially for a candidate like Justin Trudeau, who struggles with that image of projecting substance and seriousness, I don't think the Emerys help him.
No, but Marc Emery, you know, talks about the voter base, and he seems to think that he's got a huge amount of support that he can bring to the party. My question is, you know, if Mr. Trudeau continually distances himself, he's got to be careful, because if he irritates and alienates Marc Emery can turn around and probably play a pretty vicious game back.
Oh yeah, and he's got some poison words, obviously, for the Conservative government.
But a Conservative base would get that, and I think Conservatives would get that Marc Emery doesn't like them. And you know, but if Marc Emery turns on Justin Trudeau, then it puts a different spin on this.
I think so, although, I mean, Marc Emery likes to talk about the influence of Marc Emery, so it's really hard to gauge really the type of influence that he does have. I think Justin Trudeau has been fairly successful in getting his message across about legalization. That's the position that he goes for, and I think people are responding to that. You don't think that's
I don't. I mean, I don't know how it's going to work. I don't think he's done nothing to explain it. All I know is he wants to legalize it, whereas someone like myself, or I think a lot of Canadians would say, I'm okay with decriminalizing parts of it, but I'm not sure I want an out-and-out legalization of it, because that's a whole different ball game. But I think, you know, if a guy like Marc Emery looks at Justin Trudeau as the kind of the vessel that can take his agenda forward, you know, at some point he can say to Justin, like, who are you? What do you stand for? You're wishy-washy on the whole thing from every side of it.
I agree with you to a certain extent. I do think, though, that there are those voters who won't think perhaps like you and I and think, well, how is this legalization going to work? What about enforcement?
Yeah, they just want it passed.
So they just hear Justin Trudeau is in favor of legalization.
They're the low-information voters.
Right, and they're going to give him their vote. So,
sure, okay, so why isn't then Justin Trudeau putting his arm around Marc Emery. Well, I mean, if he truly believes in legalization of
Right.
marijuana, why isn't he hanging out with the Prince of Pot?
Well, if you ask the Prince of Pot, they've already hung out and smoked.
Yeah.
Yeah. But,
Gaggers.
Gaggers, that was the word. I think, well, Marc Emery, I mean, he has a sort of tumultuous past. He was in prison for 5 years, and he also
But he was in prison for something he truly, truly believes in.
Right.
So to his supporters, he is a hero. He's not looked at as a convict
Right.
or how we would normally look at those who are incarcerated.
I think a lot of people, though, look at him as sort of like a troublemaker, and he's had some off-the-cuff comments in the past. I mean, he's compared marijuana prohibition to the Holocaust, which is never a great thing to do. Just don't compare anything to the Holocaust. It never works. And he called, I think, Erwin Kotler a Nazi something or other a couple of years ago. So he's a little bit of a loose cannon. He's not exactly the guy that you want in your corner, just because you never know exactly what he's going to say. Even the words that he's been saying to describe his persecution, he's been saying that he's been betrayed by an evil government. I mean, he's not, like, to a certain extent, I mean, he has a point in terms of, you know, whether or not his punishment was proportional. That's, I think, a different debate. But the way that he frames it, he comes off sort of fringe in that sort of way. And I can see Justin Trudeau not really wanting to associate himself with that, because it's too much of a loose cannon. You don't know what he's going to say, and it could sort of contribute to that idea that Justin Trudeau is really not, he doesn't have a good grasp of what's going on in his party.
Yeah, well, look, Marc Emery arrived in Toronto this morning, and I know that we do have comments from him. I don't know if we have them ready for air yet. Are we ready with those? Okay, so we don't have those yet ready. We do have comments of Marc Emery in-house. Nonetheless, he is planning this campaign coast to coast. He'll get the media attention. I mean, is there any point when the media will bore of his narrative?
I mean, I think to a certain extent, right? When we talk about Jodie Emery, she's basically, we're talking about a single issue campaign mostly. I'm sure the Emerys stand for other things. I couldn't tell you what they are, because all they talk about is marijuana. So, I mean, will this fizzle out? Probably, and especially when you're talking about the riding of Vancouver East, where you've got Libby Davis, who's a big NDP.
Sure, but if you've got Marc Emery supporters showing up at all these campaign stops, I mean, if he plans to campaign in Canada, he's going to be following the Trudeau bus around, I'm thinking.
Oh,
and that's one of those things that the Trudeau team doesn't want. I mean, they want to be able to take the spotlight and talk about the issues that they want to talk about. They don't want to be hijacked by the smoke following them everywhere. And that could be a problem.
That could be a problem. And I mean, Justin Trudeau has talked a lot about open nominations. So he's sort of stuck between a rock and a hard place when it comes to Jodie Emery's nomination. He said that he stands for open nomination, but you can tell that the Liberals don't
and
exactly
they want her in that neck of the woods. Their nomination area, they're saying, hey, this is who we want to run. And
right.
And he's been very quiet about it.
Yeah. Well, I think, I mean, what else can he do, right? I think that's probably the position he's going to take until this fizzles out. But you're right. I think he will get a lot of media attention wherever he goes, wherever the Emerys go. There's going to be this crowd of supporters following them. It'll be the same message over and over again. And I think...
Yeah, so for whatever reason, Mr. Trudeau is going to allow the open nomination process to happen here.
Yeah.
He hasn't let it happen in other pockets.
Right.
But he's going to let it happen
open
here.
nominations. I think that's how we should reframe it. But yeah, I mean, I think it might fizzle out, but we'll have to see. I think the crowds will definitely come out to see the Emery show wherever they go.
Sure, I agree with you. All right, thank you. Robin Urbach joining us this morning.